Welcome to the EBC Podcast More Than Fitness. With a combined 50 years worth of experience and knowledge in the industry, we're going to have an open discussion on everything fitness and more. Hosted by myself, Wes, an EBC director, James Sweeney, a sports scientist and EBC director, Glynn Roberts, a former Royal Marine and EBC director, and Will Young, our online coach specialist and EBC instructor. Welcome back, guys, to the EBC Podcast More Than Fitness. Full disclaimer, today's episode we're going to be talking about mental health and specifically PTSD. We got James, Glynn and Will here again. So we're going to go straight over to Mr. Roberts. I think the best way for us to start this conversation, like we say, it's going to be very flow. It's going to open up. Glynn's going to lead it predominantly. Me and Sweeney are going to come in with bits and pieces throughout, and Will jump in whenever he can.
We'll just look.
But I think to get everyone engaged and understand it, I think we need to add full context to your story, Glynn. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you the mic and just tell us about yourself, your story, and where you are. Let's go, mate.
What, like
where are you right now?
Where are we right now? Where you are?
We're talking about military career, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined the Marines in 2000. When you were how old?
2. How old are you How old are you when you joined?
19.
In 2000. I started year 7.
What month?
Is this a roasting of me now? Say again?
What month?
March.
I was 1. I was 1. To put it in bit context, Will was 1.
Will was 1 years old.
It's done, mate. It's absolutely done. I don't even know how to go with that, to be honest.
Outstanding.
No, so actually, 1st of May. 1st of May it was.
Still 1.
Trying to squeeze another month out of that one or so. So I joined the military then, and then completed commando training 30 weeks later. It was 30 weeks back in my day, it's 32. In fact, I think it's even longer than that now.
They have muskets, didn't they? That's what
yeah.
That's
used to wear like gold tunic. Throw axes off ships and everything. So joined, passed out of training in December as an original. I like to throw that out there, which is quite a big deal in the military, especially in the Marines. I joined a 786 troop, and the failure rate and everything is so high that if you fail anything physically or anything like that, you get back trooped. And you don't realise it at the time, but when you're in training, you start to realise and understand that actually if you can get through all of this fucking shit out the other end in the same troop you started with, that's quite rare and that's quite an achievement. And the funny thing is when you get to a fighting unit, you actually get asked, were you an original? Because it gives you kudos. It means you've never failed anything. You know, you passed everything first time, all that kind of stuff. So I passed out as an original in December of 2000. From there, when you're in Livingston, you get at the end of training, when you pass out of training, you have to fill out a form and you can request what unit you want to go to, or if you want to go on a course. This is back then, this is obviously a while ago, slightly different now probably. And I completely fucked up my form because I was probably too excited the fact I've just passed training. And I didn't realise that I'd put as my first option to go as a tanky, we call it, on an anti-tanks course. I don't know, I can't remember, I don't know how I fucked it up, but I got it wrong. I thought I put in for 40 Commando, which I clearly didn't, because once they gave out your draft, they went anti-tank course, and I was like, oh shit, so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go into a fighting unit. And
how'd that go down? What it is, I don't actually fancy that.
There's nothing to do with that.
Get your head down.
The irony of it is, it paved the way for my life, didn't it? It's like everything's got a reaction, isn't it? So I whatever I did then to fuck it up, it paved my way for now. If I hadn't have done that, it might be a different path I went on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone to 4-5 Commando. I wouldn't have gone to Afghanistan, and so forth. But so I did. I basically ended up staying at Livingston. Went on an anti-tanks course, which was a laugh, to be fair. And some fucking how I came second on the course. I don't know how I done that because it was quite a difficult course in a way. You had to look at through binoculars at these tiny little models of tanks laid out on the table and tell you exactly what tank it is. It's fucking ridiculous. But the fun of it was we were going shooting big rockets and stuff all the time, so that was good fun. Anyway, I digress. Passed out, went to 4-5 Commando. Oh no, to backstory it a little bit, when I passed my course, the top 2 of the course, I believe was the top 2, whatever unit you picked, you got to go to. So if I said I want to go to 4-2 Commando, 40 Commando, you go wherever you want because you're the top 2 of the course. I came second on the course. What unit do you want to go to? 40 Commando. I won't go to Scotland. Fuck no, I was not going to Scotland. Brilliant. Got a driving licence. No, I just have a licence revoked. Brilliant, you're going to 4-5 Commando. I was like, oh, gee, you're joking, because they were only taking people with a driving licence to go to 40 Commando. So I had no driving licence because I just had been banned. Yeah. So they sent me to 4-5 either way. So I lucked out on that one, didn't I? Again, though, if I hadn't gone to 4-5, it would have been slightly different.
Yeah. The one thing that always jumps out for me, this before we started there, like I forget sometimes that you were in the military and how long ago it was. It was a long time ago. But like, there's all that. What is it on the way in? Is it 32 weeks on the way in?
30 weeks. It was for me 30 weeks.
So you get all that training, all that exposure, all that focus, and then what was it on the way out when you left?
Nothing. I'll get to that.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy in itself. That's a way of looking at things. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I passed that. I got to 4-5 Commando. I like literally shit myself. I was certain that 4-5 Commando still to this day has a reputation in the Corps for being pretty hard units. Scotland, Scottish and nails. Like everyone knows that, and it was like I got up there and I was more nervous probably walking through the gate of 4-5 Commando than I was the training centre first day. I was really nervous, and then I got assigned to a Zulu company, which again had a really fucking dark reputation. And I was just like, oh Christ, like little fucking 19-year-old blonde bloke from Essex, walking through the doors of Zulu Company 4-5, and I was just like, I'm gonna get roasted. Which I did. I won't go into that because definitely can't go into that on the podcast. And then months later, we did loads of spent all our time in mountain training, running up and down mountains. Literally, that's all we spent our time doing. And then I got put on a 50 cal course, which is basically, everyone's seen the film Black Hawk Down with the massive 50 cal machine guns. So I got trained how to use that. And then, almost a year passed, and then 9/11 happened, and that's when everything just took a massive turn. You know, because I'm pretty sure it's one of those incidents in life where everyone remembers. You was in fucking kindergarten, but everyone remembers where they were when 9/11 happened. And for me, it was really surreal. Anybody that was in the military at that time, and 4-5 Commando were classed as spearheads at anything in the world that happened. They were the first to get deployed. And I walked into my grot, your room, my flat, and the telly was on and it happened. I remember looking at one of the lads, and, what movie are you watching? He went, they're saying a movie, it's just fucking happened. And I was like, what? Then the whole unit, the atmosphere in the unit changed. Do you know what I mean? And then we got put on a notice to move. So we had to pack all our kit at the end of the bed. We were told we weren't allowed to leave camp for a certain period. I can't remember how long that was. And then that got relaxed off a little bit, and then we weren't allowed to go further south than Carlisle. Don't know why. It must be a distance to travel type thing. Someone will probably maybe comment of why, I don't know. And then that got relaxed again by another week, and then we could go home. And fucking sod's law, I'm at home. I'm in bed, I get a phone call, and it was, and you need to get your ass back up to 4-5 now. I was like, oh, fuck's sake, all right. So me and one of the lads that I got friendly with was a corporal. He was from Essex, and we jumped on the phone together. And we blagged an overnight train back up to Scotland, and on a sleeper train, which is quite weird. Never been a sleeper train before. You go to sleep on the train, ironically enough. Got to 4-5, and then that was it. Kit packed. Got on a coach, went back down south. I mean, they could have fucking met me down there with my kit, couldn't they, Jack? Could have met me down there, but they didn't. So I packed the kit, went back down there, and we boarded HMS Ocean, which was another surreal moment, because you pull up alongside out on a coach, and you know, back in my day, we didn't really spend a huge amount of time on a boat, even though we were Marines. And I pulled up alongside the ship, and everyone was like, "Fucking Jesus, the size of that!" That novelty wore off after about 2 weeks. That was boring. Being on that, because we just train all the time, pot wash, get told off, throw eggs at each other, just get in trouble. And then we sailed down the Suez Canal in a holding pattern down near Oman, and then it got really surreal when the Sergeant Major. There was only 2 companies of 4-5 Commando on the boat at the time. And he got everyone on the flight deck of the boat, and he got us all into this, we got us lined up in 3 ranks, and he just basically said, he was an ex-Falkland veteran, Ross Craig, absolute legend of a man. And he literally said, look at the guy next to you. He said, he won't come back from this. and the whole atmosphere of the boat changed. Everyone was like, fucking hell, if he says that, this is, and he's like, you better make your phone calls home. And you're like, shit. So I can remember, I remember ringing my mum, and I just like, for some reason, she's panicking, started going to me. She went, are you going to Somalia? I'm fucking Somalia. I'm like, no, I'm going to Afghanistan. She was like, oh shit. And then you go through this process of trying to adjust in your head, and the atmosphere changes, because then rather than dicking about training and just doing laps of the boat for the shits and giggles, it's like, right, we need training syllabus starts now. Yeah. We need to prep the weapons, prep the vehicles. And we did this really, it was quite a cool exercise. It was quite funny actually. It's funny and not funny. Like the Matlows, all the Navy guys started giving us shit, and they were just being fucking dicks. Like you'd line up for scran in the galley, one of the Matlows would be like, oh, enjoy your last meal. Well, one of them got thrown overboard. Like it's just like, you don't say to a load of bootnecks and give them shit like that, you're about to go to war, because they don't take it very kindly, do you know what I mean? So they because one of our taskings was to go into the caves of Afghanistan with like night vision and clear the caves. So that's what we got told we were going to do. So that was like, fucking hell, that's going to be like fun. So they turned all the lights off in the ship and put figure 11 targets, all these like wooden targets around the boat. And a lot of the Navy guys had to act as like hostage and stuff like that. And it came over the tannoy, like basically like, don't piss the fucking bootnecks off, otherwise they're going to fill you in, because they're taking this seriously. So we had to go around in like teams of 4, literally down the flight decks with the lights off and monocles on, and clear the flight decks. Like we were practicing doing cave clearance, and then we were doing live firing off the back of the ship and all that kind of stuff.
Sorry mate, a quick question for you while you're talking there. Like, when you actually joined, did you see yourself going into like active theatre and fighting?
No.
So you didn't?
No.
So when was the switch in mindset on that? Like when did it all become a bit real? Like
when Russ Craig said he's not coming back from this.
Because it's totally different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally different. Like, I mean, the thing is, 9/11's happened, you know something's going on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And we knew America out there, like having a fight. And we knew America were taking casualties. We got told that all the special forces, that there's a really famous battle that happened called Roberts Ridge. And that happens to be the Ridge Lines. A guy won Medal of Honor, a Navy SEAL guy, because their Chinook got shot down, and this happened to be the ridgeline that we had to go and clear on the first day. So basically we got told we were deploying, and it was really surreal. It was like something out of a movie. So you'll see on these massive ships, they have like a massive lift that comes up, and they load the aircraft and it comes up to the top of the deck. It was something like out of a Top Gun movie. We was all lined up, kit on, weapons, the whole lot, and this thing comes up like that, and everyone's just stood there staring at it, and you walk off thinking you're like something out of a fucking movie. It was quite surreal, really. And then so you board the aircraft. We have to fly to Oman, and from there we boarded C-130s. And this is when everything started to get really, when you knew it was getting really serious, because at that time you're thinking, all right, we know we're going to war, but I don't know. It's a bit like, I don't know. I can only relate to like having a kid. Like, your missus is pregnant, it's like, I know I've got a kid, but when the kid's there, you're like, fuck, I'm a dad. Like, then it hits you. And when we got onto the C-130, and as we're flying, you could only fly in at night, and the more they're starting to say, the more we're thinking, fucking hell, this is quite serious, isn't it? They're like, we can only fly at night, because if we fly during the day, we're going to get shot at. You're like, okay, fucking hell. And I'm 19 years old, do you know what I mean? And so we landed, and then someone come on, and we landed with a load of, I think they were SBS lads, and it was only a handful of us and SB lads, and they literally said, any SF guys, and you need to cover your faces, because we're about to get off the aircraft, and there's press everywhere out here. And whatever you do not walk off the runway, because it's mined everywhere. And you're like, this isn't an exercise anymore, is it? This is fucking quite serious. And those that are old enough to remember who Kate Adie was, like she was like, do you remember Kate Adie, the war correspondent? You remember Kate Adie?
Yeah.
Please say yes.
Didn't she get shot?
I don't think so. Like she was like, any major war in the world, she was like always reporting on it.
Yeah, I do remember, vaguely.
And I remember walking off the ramp of the C-130, this is Kate Adie reporting live, and I was just like, oh, this must be fucking serious, and Kate Adie's here. And there was press everywhere, and it was like, all these cameras going off. I'm like, this is fucking weird. It was just really surreal. Do you know what I mean? And then we spent 2 weeks, this is in Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. And now Bagram, obviously not now, but it would become a massive city when I got there. Like, was nothing there. We had to put all our tents up, and they dug holes in the ground for shitters and all this kind of stuff. And because Bagram Air Base is actually a really high altitude, so we had to spend 2 weeks of Bagram doing loads of fizz and training, and then we deployed for our first operation, that's when it got even weirder. I don't know how to explain it. You can't really you can't put it into context. It's the most surreal thing. It's like if you're in the military and you exercise and you're on an aircraft, your weapon's never made ready. So it's never cocked with one in the chamber. But as soon as you step off, you make it ready. And I remember walking off the aircraft, making it ready, and I remember thinking, this is for real. I've made that ready for fucking real. It's not an exercise anymore.
Yeah.
That's real shit. Do you know what I mean? And basically, we got a briefing that that a load of American SF had been hit, and a Chinook got shot down, which happened to turn out to be the Roberts Ridge. So our first job was to go up to this area and clear the area where it was full of fucking Al Qaeda and Taliban. So we got this briefing that the Americans were. Literally, I remember we got told they were carrying about 120 pound of kit. And they were walking for a certain distance and stopping and walking because the altitude. Obviously, people don't realise Afghan's a very high mountain range. And so it's altitude sickness. So people were struggling. The Yanks were really struggling with it. So some bright spark was like me and my oppo had to manpack a 50 cal machine gun, which is 185 pound. So my Bergen weighed 185 pound. So, you load up 185 pound in your back, and I couldn't even stand up. So when you're sitting down on the sides of a Chinook helicopter, and you all know what them like, the little seats on the side, I couldn't stand up. Lads were pulling me up. And when the Chinook first landed on this ridge, the back end opened up and they were hovering. They didn't land. There was nothing there. It was literally a ridge line like that, and they're hovering the back end of it over. And the guys on the back of the Chinook wanted us off like fucking ASAP. Because you've heard of Chinook, they're flying bullet magnets. You can hear them coming a mile away, and it's sitting there hovering, like literally in the middle of a fucking mountain range in Afghan. They didn't want to be there, and they're like, "Get off, get off!" And I'm like, "Mate, I'm carrying a fucking house on my back. Give me wait one, I'll get off in a second." I'm waddling myself off this thing, made my weapon ready, and walked up this ridge line. There's snow everywhere. The lad in front of me just looked at me and just went, "Look at that!" Turned around and just see this helicopter hovering. Or it just sitting there perfectly, and all the line of lads just walking off. And it's just weird. It's weird. You're like rabbit in a headlight. You're just literally looking around, everything like that. It's just adrenaline. It's fucking mental.
What a TikTok reel that would have made, didn't it? Do you know what I mean? What's the crack? Can they have phones? Like, what's the deal with that sort of stuff now?
Hey, fucking hell.
But
I didn't have cameras on my phone then. The Nokia 3310.
He had Snake.
Well, I'm just saying, do you know what people are like these days?
Yeah, no.
Probably be like,
our phones didn't have cameras back then. Literally, you couldn't have, because OPSEC, you couldn't have a phone with you anyway. No. So we made a phone call once a week, couple of weeks.
Like now though, so when people are out operational now, what's the crack with phones and that? Do they just not have them?
I wouldn't. I do know SF get told to leave their phones in the UK, but I don't know about general military. I don't know how that works.
When you got dropped off, were you in small teams? Was there like a few of you? Or?
No, there was no. It's just Zulu company at the time. Just my company. So we got the tasking was it sounds really cheesy, and it's like a search and destroy. So our tasking was to go and find these caves and basically get rid of them.
Did you feel ready for that at 19 years old? The training's second to none, right? Did you feel ready for that though?
No.
I don't think anybody would.
You can't mentally prepare for that.
It's crazy.
Because it was the way it's like the escalation of it. It's just you go from like. I don't want to say plain soldier because you're just on exercise all the time, and I know that the Marines are extremely well trained and they are really good soldiers, but until you do it for real, it's nothing like it.
No.
Because it's your mindset changes because when you're on exercise patrolling for the wood, they're like, you got to watch your enemy, and you're walking around going like that, knowing there's no fucker out there, or even if there is a couple of blokes playing enemy, they can't kill me. Or they might go, I shot you. It's like, cheers. And I'm being very facetious about it. Obviously, you do take training very seriously, but I'm trying to explain the difference between exercise and reality. Because in your head, you're going, every step I take, I could tread on something here. So I mean, every step I take could be an IED. Every bearded bloke that runs around could be fucking Taliban.
It's like a constant state of anxiety, isn't it?
Yeah, which is one of the things that I talk about now. Is like everyone always wants to hear about the bullets and the bombs and the shit blowing up and this, that, and the other. But what people don't realise is the constant state of anxiety all the time. Yeah. And that's what was, and it was really weird. Like, so we went across this ridge line and we got to where it was, and there was this Chinook that we found was burnt out. There was a blood bag hanging there. There was a severed hand. There was a couple of bodies laying on the floor, like Taliban bodies. One was covered in bricks, and you're just like, fucking hell! Like it was just so much to like take in, like instantly, and it was I don't know. Again, like I said, like when you're exercise, you get in your sleeping bag, and you take your boots off and shit like that, but. Literally, you're in Afghanistan up this mountain range, and you're in your sleeping bag with your boots on and your body arm, and you're hugging your fucking weapon like that with your helmet on your head. And that's the difference between exercise and reality. Like it's because you don't know what's coming. You're so acute to everything that goes on, every noise. You can hear crack thumps of rounds going off in the distance. You're like, is that coming this way? Or I've never had a bullet fly past my head before. Is it supposed to sound like that, or is it? Well, I know when it's really close. You know, there's just so much going through your head, and then that just went on. And it was a 6.5 month deployment, and that was physically the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, without question. Physically hardest thing I've ever done. It was fucking brutal.
So what you're saying as well, it's like 6.5 months in a state of constant anxiety and stress, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, there's no breaks. Because you're constantly, up, aren't you? Your body's up, waiting.
Because even when you come back to camp, you can't, you get into bed at night. And in the night, you're like, fuck me, they're mortaring us. So it's just like, there's never a chill time, which is why you get this dark humour. Yeah. Because that's the only way you can deal with it. Yeah. Because you'll be sitting there in your camp and suddenly, boom, someone outside of your perimeter stood on an IED planted somewhere. You'd literally, every day, boom, you'd be like, oh, there's someone, and you'd laugh. Oh, there you go, someone else has at it, someone else has just trodden on one. You don't know who it is, but someone's fucking set one off somehow. And it was constantly doing that all the time. Then it's like, right, like you're going to get an operations brief, and now we're going to go on our next job. And then you'd be flying around, suddenly the fucking helicopter banks really hard, all the fucking chaff's coming out the back because you're getting something shooting at you. And you're sitting there going, fucking hell, am I even going to make it to my next job?
Do you think like the bravado side of it, to cope with it, like as a coping mechanism, which obviously, that's what developed because that's what it is. Like, I know some lads that are a little bit younger that have been through it and been in and whatever. Do you feel like that's changed a little bit, and that that stigma's changed a little bit, that it's not? Whereas when you were in, it might have been not spoken about.
Yeah, it's as in like talking about your problems type thing.
Yeah, as in like, so you might make a joke about something that was quite dark, like you said. Do you feel like that's changed now, like that people will openly talk a little bit more?
I think they try and get people to talk about it more. But I don't think the lads are really doing much at the moment compared to what we did in my day. We were busy. From 9/11 really, all the way up to 2017, 18, I think was the last deployment for the Marines and the British. That's borderline, 17 years of non-stop deployments. So you've got a whole like generation of blokes that have just fucking dealt with it differently. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know how lads will deal with it now, because I do think society's a lot softer.
But go on, mate, did you correct me if I'm wrong? Did you do 2 tours?
Yeah, Afghan.
So that was your first.
Yeah.
So how long was your first tour? Sorry.
6.5 months. Yeah.
Were you back in the UK, or were you just on base in Afghanistan?
Yeah, on base the whole time.
And then
we didn't get.
Oh, okay.
So normally you get given a date for an R&R, which is like a 2-week break in between it, but we never got a break.
Oh, wow.
There was no,
so
and then we never got.
So
we
how
never
long
got
were
an
you
end
out
date.
there for?
Pardon?
How long were you out there for in total?
6.5 months. No, sorry, it was 5 months, I think, actually in country, and then add on the top we was on ship as well. I think someone's going to listen to this and go, "No, your dates are wrong," but I think it was something like that.
Wow.
But we didn't get any R&R date. So normally you get a 2-week period. They send you home and you come back again to get your head out of it, which doesn't always work, I don't think.
I was going to say, if you did that,
I can only explain that from my perspective.
So extremes of conditions, isn't it?
And then we didn't get an end date. There was no end date for us in Afghan, because it was just like, you're just going to keep going until we're fucking done.
Wow.
And then literally they said you're going home in a few days. I have a photo of me laying in a sleeping bag, literally in the mountains of Afghanistan on a job, woken up in the morning, one of my oppos taking a photo, and I'm like, massive smile because that was the day I was going home. Do you know what I mean? And there's a photo of me just after that in the helicopter, and honestly, I'm like this. The two contracts, I've got photos of me on jobs, and I look fucked. And this one photo, I'm like that because I'm going home.
Just going home.
I'm going home.
Yeah.
And that was that for that period, which was just it's a really surreal time. It's just fucking physically demanding, really tough.
So let's kind of delve into obviously taking yourself out of that situation and then coming back into civilization, I guess. How do you even transition that? Because you spent 6 months on literally not knowing, am I going to see the next day? How am I going to cope with this? Or like I say, making jokes about people standing on IEDs and whatever. How do you transition that into everyday life? How do you even cope with something like that?
I didn't.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And no one tells you how to cope with it. That is the major problem. You know, so Jim knows me from back then, and I remember my dad saying to me once, I was just not a very nice person to be around. You know, I was scrapping all the time, went out drinking a lot.
I remember he'd come back, you looked like like Dairy Lee triangles. Yeah. So he literally was just shoulders, like massive.
Nothing's really changed to me.
Stacked. No, it was stacked. You were stacked. It was absolutely stacked. And we go out and literally you were up for it all the time.
You're just a hand grenade. And do you know what's really weird? I can remember being in the days of Duke's nightclub, and I can remember being out one night, standing on the balcony, looking down at the dance floor. I vividly remember it, fucking hating everybody in the club, hating everyone, resented them. Do you know what I mean? Because I remember looking at everyone, having a really good time, thinking, you've got no fucking idea what I've just been up to. That's not anybody's fault, but I didn't know. I was 19, 20 years old. I had no idea how to understand that. Yeah. But I resented and hated everybody there. You know, if you looked at me wrong, I remember hanging one bloke over the fucking balcony of the club because he looked at my mate wrong. Do you know what I mean? You're just on a hair trigger, but I don't know, there's no other way to explain it. You don't know how to deal with it.
So he was, just my side of it from what I observed, right? Because we've obviously been mates for a long time. So he'd come back off of a tour, stacked, and literally up. He was like, anybody looked at him funny or anything he was just well up for it, which is not right or wrong, but that's the kind of, because 2 days before, he's in an environment where people are trying to shoot at you and you're the enemy. And then 2 days later or 48 hours later, he's in Chelmsford in a club. And you can't just switch that off, can you? Because that's how you're trained. That's what you've been dealing with for the last 6 months. But none of this was spoken about, and there was no name for any of this, was there? What it sort of goes into, and I think there's definitely some sort of obligation to start dealing with some of this stuff. You shouldn't to go from an environment like that and a fighting arena like that, and then be back home in 2 days. There's no cooling off period, is there? Nothing.
No.
Which doesn't help, does it?
No, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. They don't. No one teaches you any of that. It's a very surreal thing to deal with, and you don't. No, it's just. I don't even think anybody knew how to deal with it, because let's get it right. Pre 9/11, we'd had Northern Ireland, right, and no one ever fucking spoke about Northern Ireland. As we all know, a lot of people got fucked up from that. You had Gulf War 1, they called it Gulf War Syndrome, right, which is basically PTSD. No one really knew. It didn't have a label, and I'm glad it's spoken about more now, but also I do think it's so spoken about now, people label it on everything, right? Do you know what I mean? And no one knew how to deal with it. Like when I went to Iraq, one of the lads it was in my company at the time, I think it was the day we were deploying, left a note on his bed and he went, "Sorry lads, I can't go back." He went AWOL. You know, and all we did was took the piss out of him. We were like, "A fucking beefer, what's wrong with him?" But deep down, we're all going, "Yeah, no one wants to go fucking back to that, do they?" But you didn't. No one spoke about it. Like my good mate Rob, you know, I still stick to this day. I can vividly remember. And I happened to, long story with him, but I happened to be in the same unit as him, and we ended up deploying to Iraq together. And I've known him since I was 16, and I remember a few days we looked at each other. And where you give each other a look where you're just like, "Oh, fucking knackered." But no one said anything. No one said anything. "You all right?" "Yeah, I'm all right." "Sure?" "Yeah." "You're all right." "All right, okay, you want to go to the gym?" "Yeah, all right." That's how you dealt with it. You're just seeking adrenaline to deal with the issues. Do you know what I mean?
So obviously that's sort of early 2000s, wasn't it? So the PTSD side of it, what do you think it looked like for you? When did you start to think, well, that's not, my response to that's not right? Like, what did it start to look like?
Like a particular
Realisation
that kind of sits in your mind and goes, yeah, that's not good.
So I cut off at anything military for quite a long time after I left. Like, I wouldn't have told you where my green beret was. I didn't have a clue where my medals were. My uniform was in a loft somewhere. I couldn't give a shit. I didn't deal with it. And then I've spoken about this once before, and the thing, it was weird. So Ross Kemp did a TV show, didn't he? He was out with the military quite a lot, and I believe it was Ross Kemp, and he was out with my old unit, 40 Commando, and there was a lad on there called Paul Weiss, and in this particular episode, they were following his unit, my old unit, around and interviewing him and stuff, and he said this really poignant thing, and he said, I've done, how many tours he'd done by that point, 5, 6 or something, and he said, you come out here enough times, it's not if you get hit, it's when you get hit. And then the screen paused, and it said the next day Vicey stood on an ID, and I remember that like it was yesterday, and it hit me really hard, and I've never understood why. It really, because I served in the same unit as Vicey, it was like I felt, then it really hit me that, why did I leave? Maybe I should have stayed. And I never really understood why. I think it was kind of like a survivor's guilt type thing, do you know what I mean? And Vicey's around, but he's lost a leg and got hit through the throat, lost shrapnel through his neck. And I think he knows about this story because he messaged me once on social media, but that was the moment where things started to make a little bit of a downhill. It was like it triggered something in my head.
Did you say you felt a bit guilty about it for not?
I don't think I'd use the word guilty, but it started to make me really think hard.
Maybe you should have
stayed in.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And right. I don't really know why, but his accident made me start going, I should have stayed in. Because he was the first guy that I really knew that had been seriously injured. And I remember it sitting on my sofa, and I remember sitting up, staring at the telly like that, texting mates, what the fuck's happened to Vicey? But like, and then after that point, that's when my life started to sort of take a bit of a dark hill spiral, and then I started to really just sort of regress in myself. And then it was Jim that was the one that really said to me, and I ended up going through a divorce and stuff, and Jim was like, you need to speak to someone. And I was like, no, I'm just fucking divorcing it, it's a bit shit. And he's like, and I remember him going, that runs deeper than that, mate. There's something deeper than that.
I just felt like, and again, I observed some of we spent a lot of time together, putting bits together. There was a period where we put an obstacle course together up in Suffolk, and we were on an old airbase. And some of the things that you were doing, I didn't feel like some of the things that you were doing weren't coming from now. They were coming from a little bit right later on. The one that always jumps out for me was we got up early one morning, and you were like, fucking hell, mate, I fucking sweats last night. I went, what do you mean? He went, and I've turned to look at him. I was like, I can't remember what I was doing. Probably had the kettle on or something. I turned to look at you, and you were like, you jumped in a swimming pool. I thought you'd got in the shower. I went, mate, what's the crack with that? And you were like, I get the night sweats. And in my head, I'm thinking, what can that be? Do you know what I mean? Like, that was the first thing that I remember thinking to myself.
That happened. I started getting night terrors after Afghan, and I'm one of these people that are just like, I just deal with it.
You cuffed it off.
There's a military term, just crack on. Do you know what I mean? Just crack on. That's just my mindset. Like, if something happens, just get on with it. If there's something shit happens, just get on with it. And I started to get these night sweats, and I remember waking up when I was based up in Scotland, like fucking. I had to go to this routine every single night. I'd get into bed, I'd lay a towel down in my bed, and then have another towel next to me, because I'd wake up in the middle of the night, flip the duvet over, take the towel off, lay another towel down, because I'd be so fucking wet. But I never sat there and thought, oh, maybe it's because of that. I just was like, well, I didn't even know what it was. But that went on for years. And then when I remember I was with an ex-girlfriend, and then I remember her being at sleep at night, and then a door would slam really loud at the door, and I'd be like, ah, fucking hell. Do you know what I mean? Like jumping, and like from a loud bang, and I I never once sat there and just went, I've got a problem, I've got to deal with it. You know, you just bury it. You just park it, just sweep it under the carpet and just crack on. And that went on for years. And then, you know, and it was like, you remember you saying to me once, like, we'd go to a job and I wouldn't get out of the van to go to work and stuff like that. And, you know, little things started to happen. And then my ex at the time was like, you know, maybe you need to speak to someone, and gave me a leaflet to do with mental health. And, you know, used to tick all these boxes. And I remember ticking, they're going for this questionnaire thing. And at the end of it is like, you might need to speak to someone. I was like, good bollocks. You know, that kind of mentality is like, nah, that's bollocks.
It's a massive deal to be mindful enough to think, actually, my response to that probably is not where it should be. That's massive to be able to do.
I always explain it's like being an alcoholic. Put your hands up and going, I'm an alcoholic. Because they're not going to do anything about it until they openly admit to themselves that they have a problem. And it's the same with PTSD. You can't just suddenly go, I've got a problem. It doesn't work like that. Do you know what I mean? It's other people are going to notice it more. And if you feel it in yourself, the way I explain to people now is you have to try and talk to someone about it. But it's very hard, because I used to spin stories or spin dits and stuff like that. But you're spinning a story to someone, a civvy friend, that's got no fucking idea what you're going through. So you're like dramatising it and humanising it and not making it all funny.
Yeah.
But deep down, that's a real story you're going through. But when you spin that story to a lad that's been through similar, that story has a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
You didn't really used to talk about it that much. Like, I think you talk about being in Marines, but I can count on probably one hand the amount of times you actually referenced stories and stuff that you've been through that were a bit. And one of the only sort of like times you used to go through it was when we went up to, you know, that airbase, and you were like, it's like being, you know, back in military digs or whatever. So maybe that used to sort of like prompt you to talk about it.
Yeah.
But very rarely you used to talk about being in the Marines, but nothing specific. And that used to come out, I think. But the other thing is as well, like, we're talking early sort of, you know, 2000s here. No one was talking about. There's a stigma attached to all this stuff. Then no one was talking about it. Like, you know, like PTSD. There was no PTSD. You know, there was no label for it, was there?
No.
So that wasn't, you know, it wasn't openly spoken about, was it?
No. But no one did. The military certainly wouldn't fucking talk about it. It's just like it's a big boys' world, isn't it? Like you're a Marine, you're fucking nails, and you know you don't talk about that kind of shit. You can't show weakness. You don't do that. No, fuck no, dear bollocks. You know, like Jesus, lads would get letters coming out to Afghanistan saying their other arse had just left them or something like that, and you know that bloke probably wants one of the lads to be like, do you want to go put the kettle on and have a quick chat about it?
Yeah, massive. Yeah.
They'd be like, oi! Like, just give you shit. They wouldn't make it any better. They just give you neat shit. She's probably been with us at the rugby club anyway, mate. Like, because that was the dark humour of how it was dealt with. Yeah. You know, and that's why you have this dark humour ingrained into you, even still to this day.
So fast forward to now, and it's obviously a lot more acceptable. It's got a name, which is of benefit, obviously, and obviously it's a lot more openly spoken about.
It is, but it's still hard to comprehend, and I still don't like it now, because even though it's easy for I got told once that how can I explain it? The problem with people accepting that they've got PTSD, in particular people that have not lost any limbs, that's hard to accept, because you look in the mirror and you go, why the fuck have I got a problem? My mate has got no legs. He's got a problem. He seems all right. Why? And that seems to get into your head, because that really used to bother me. You know, like there's lads out there with no arms and fucking legs, and you know, what have I got a fucking bitch about? Do you know what I mean?
You almost feel like it's almost like being an imposter.
Yes, yeah, you do, because but I got told trauma's trauma, whether it's physical or mental.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I say to people.
But to get
now.
to that point, you'd have had to have probably gone through a lot of stuff to fully understand that now for yourself. So was there a specific, like, what did you do to go and get help?
So I spoke to 2 counsellors originally. I don't know, I think I very flippantly was a bit like, right, because I was basically almost living off sleeping tablets at one point, and just like, just not being my normal self, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's sometimes it's hard to talk about, but it was I just knew that at some point, all right, maybe I better go speak to someone. But I didn't really want to. I thought, all right, I will. And I did. And I was not into it in the slightest. I can vividly remember my first session. And she sat there, this woman was talking to me, and she dealt with military people in the past and all this, and I was just like, yeah.
Was that, mate? Was that where you were, or do you think it was just not a good fit for you for the counsellor?
I do think it's a bit of both. I think you need to find a counsellor you can relate to, but I just think I was in complete denial with it. And then I went and spoke to I remember driving all the way, I think it was Loughton or Epping somewhere, to speak to this other one. I can't remember how I got recommended her. Similar situation, just sitting, just staring at her, just going, yeah, just thinking this is fucking bollocks, isn't it?
The process, mate, as well. Like, so when you thought to yourself, well, I better talk to someone. That ground you travelled and that process, like, how long do you reckon you're looking at a timeline on that?
10 years.
Yeah, so
it's around about 10 years.
It's not like a quick fix, is it?
No. Yeah.
And a lot of that, do you feel like a lot of that's been you processing what's been going on?
I don't think I've processed anything, because if you jump back a little bit to how I left the military, is what I then found out, which is one of the biggest things that completely screwed my head up, was I'd given my notice to leave. And you have to give a year's notice to leave, and in that period I'd been deployed to Iraq, and Iraq was, in a way, it was very different to Afghanistan for obvious various reasons. But the other thing about Iraq was that you were governed by a lot of rules of engagement. Well, disclaimer, you're governed by the rules of engagement everywhere you go. But Afghanistan was very aggressive, whereas Iraq at that particular time was very different. So if you got shot at and then they put the rifle down, you couldn't do anything about it, because they're now classed as unarmed. There was so many rules that you had to follow, and it was like you drive around into Basra, and you're just like a fucking sitting target, constantly getting fucking like IEDs going off. They'd hide IEDs in dead bodies of dogs and stuff like that. And you'd be driving down the road just fucking waiting to be shot at. You're just like constant moving target for them. And it was like they used to say to you, don't let any vehicle come in your convoy. Never let a vehicle come. Oh, fucking vehicles coming in your convoy all the time. So you're like, well, what do I do? Shoot this bloke in the face because he's now coming between my convoy? Do you know what I mean? And then you get into a job, and they'd be saying, like, they'd be counting rounds when you got back in again. Like, did you use too many rounds in that firefight on this kind of bullshit? And then that just got ridiculous. And then for me, I remember my site major coming up to me and he said, well, you go home. I think it was a few days or a week's time. I was just like, all right, that's a bit fucking sudden, isn't it? It's like, yeah, your time's up. And the military's so black and white. Like, I'm in Iraq. I'd been in Iraq for 4.5 months, maybe 5 months, I think, something at this point.
So when they said your time's up, as in you were leaving?
Yeah, I was becoming a civic.
And that was that?
That was it.
As blank
they
as
went,
that?
yeah, you get a flight in a few days' time. I literally flew home, and this is how black and white it was. And I never realised until years down the line that this really screwed up my head, was the fact that I literally was in Iraq, and then 24 hours later, 48 hours later, 24 hours later, I'm handing my kit back into the 40 Commando, literally, give your ID card back. You go and see some fucking duty sprog officer that's in an office, he just like sits there with these documents, he's never met you in his life, signs a bit of paper, yeah, you're in civvies, yeah, thank you for your service.
Thanks very
Gave
much.
me that, and I drove out the gate. And I was just like, what
crazy.
The fuck do I do now?
I think, like, given that amount of time...
literally, you go from Iraq to walking the streets of Chelmsford within 24 hours, 48 hours.
And I wonder why it kicks off.
And then they went, you've got 12 weeks leave, do what you want. Because you accumulate POTLs, the post-operational toilets. The amount of time you're away, you get time back. So I accumulated time off from being in Iraq, and they give you, I think it's 4 weeks. So it's like a date called a TX date, which is the official date. You're now, like, you stop being in the military and you're a civvy. You get 4 weeks up until that point. I think it's 4 weeks. And then you get your POTL added onto that. So I had like 12 weeks of no lads, they're still in Iraq.
Just
like, I know they're still out there, and that's bothering me because they're out there. Do you know what I mean? I'd like, what the fuck do I do?
Did you get any support at all from the military?
Fuck all. Nothing.
I remember watching it was on the news once, and a guy had gone through, I think he'd lost a limb. This guy was in the military, and basically he was on the news and he was talking about coming out of the military and basically how you get little to no support whatsoever. And he'd basically proven, so he'd taken a load of lads and done some sort of, I think they'd gone to, they'd either summited something or gone to a poll, I think. And he'd proven that a good way to, assimilate back into Civvy Street was to take an ex-military, an ex-soldier or someone that's been in the military on an adventure, and that helps with giving them purpose. Yeah. And he was like, so we've proven that works, but the problem is that's going to cost 15 grand per person. So that squashes it straight away from a finance point of view. So some of the research and that's been done to help, but it all comes down again to money, doesn't it? And you think it's crazy to think that you've gone all that training, all that experience, on the way out you get nothing. Makes no sense.
Literally, you don't get anything.
Makes no sense at all.
The whole thing is baffling me. So there's no way you can prep yourself for going to war. There's just no ways until you're there. And then when you leave, it's like, yeah, cheers, catch you later.
Yeah, nothing.
Like that is baffling. That there's not like an exiting.
Like when we come back from Afghanistan, it was really weird because we flew back into Glasgow Prestwick, and the Defence Secretary was there, and it's weird. I've never seen anything like it. And again, this was. I've processed this now, but it was hard for me. We landed in Glasgow, and there's everyone gets off the aeroplane. It's like you can imagine what it was like. Everyone's probably seen it on social media and stuff. Everyone gets there's banners fucking up everywhere. You know, the British haven't been to a proper war like that for quite a while, and we're the first unit to come back from it. I walk into the airport and there's mothers and family greeting everybody and all this kind of stuff, and there was no one. I was the only one that walked out the airport, no one there. Do you know what I mean? That was really hard. I just walked. Everyone's cuddling kids and family and mums and dads. And I walked straight over to a separate check-in desk and went, "Can I get a flight to Stansted, please?"
That burn.
And I flew back home to Stansted. I got a bus from Stansted back to I was at my mum's house at the time, and just walked through the front door. And went, "All right." How'd you process that?
That's crazy.
And she was like, "Yeah, yeah." I can't remember her reaction, but it wasn't. I don't think it was particularly like, it wasn't like, "Woo."
But the thing is, anybody I think would like. There'd be resentment in that. The way you've come back into the country on its own, without any kind of like recognition or anything. Not that you want recognition, but
no, it wasn't about recognition.
But to get some like a debrief, like on what's gone on and decompress a little bit. That's just crazy. Yeah. And to think that's happened how many times?
Yeah, I know.
Crazy.
Yeah, you don't know how to. You just don't know how to process it.
No. Did you feel like you must have felt a bit of resentment?
Towards who?
What you've gone through?
No, I did this is the problem. I did when I come back from Iraq. I was older. So I mean, when I come back from Afghanistan, I didn't know any different. I just thought this is the way it was. I just thought this is just the way the game is played. I didn't know any different.
That's mad.
But there's a lot of blokes that go through that same process. No one understands how to deal with it. No. And it's not until years later, as you get older, I think maturity comes in. You can start to process it a little bit. And learn to deal with it and accept certain things and all that kind of stuff. But it was really hard to deal with. I didn't know what to do. Just didn't know what to do.
If you fast forward as well, like a little bit more when you were going through the counselling, and then obviously I can't remember how we got introduced to Rock to Recovery, but obviously they're a fantastic.
I found out about them on social media. I found out about them, and they were good. They were brilliant because they coached me. And one of the things that I learned through Rock to Recovery is that I struggled with fight and flight. So I was on one extreme or the other. Do you know what I mean? Like you flick a switch, I'm all in. Do you know what I mean? Or I'm completely the opposite. I couldn't balance the two, and that's because from what I learned, as I never had a chance to kind of balance it out when I left. There was no decompression. I was literally from being full on to being at home, completely sitting on my arse doing nothing, literally nothing.
Were you like that before you were in the military, do you think?
What's that?
Were you like that before you went into the Marines?
I was when you were younger, active kid. When I was in every fucking sports club going. I was a duty jock of the year.
But like, were you kind of like? Do you feel like that you maybe learned that from what you went through in the Marines, like that all in or just nothing? Do you think that was learned, or do you think it was already there?
I think there's probably a part of because when you go for counselling, a lot of the time you always think this. Oh, my issue comes from that. Well, actually, a lot of it doesn't. A lot of it stems even further than that.
Of course,
always. Everybody's always deeper, but then that just escalates it or elevates it to another level. So, if I look at anything that I ever did sporty, I was always all in. Do you know what I mean? You put me into a sport club, I'm all in. I was always very good at sport. Martial arts, everything. I always achieved very high levels at every sport I went into. So I was always all in, but then I just never understood that massive drop off of the other side of it. who's going to know how to deal with that? Yeah. Unless you get taught it or told it, or when you go home, you might feel like this. They might do it different now. I don't know, but for me, it was nothing like that at all.
Even from like a purpose point of view, like when you're in the military, you got a purpose every day. You get up and you got a job to do and whatever. As soon as you come out of that, you're just like, well, I don't do that anymore. And even that transition back out.
Well, that's really common. That's
huge.
A lot of sportsmen get that. And a lot of people that say work in the city, they've been in a team of guys working in the bank or, that kind of level. You once you leave that, you feel like you've lost something.
Yeah.
That's the part of you, haven't you?
Yeah.
When you come out.
You've lost your identity. And especially when you're at a very elite level of something, and I'm not taking that away from guys that work in the city and all that kind of, or any job that work in a team and all that. But when you spent a long time building yourself up to get to this extremely high elite level in the military, and then you get to go to play the game that you are supposed to be doing, that you train for, and then suddenly it's all taken away from you with not even a phone call a week later, how you doing? Like literally from one extreme to the other, you couldn't get any further from it.
That's tough.
How do you process that?
You probably start getting a bit angry with it, like, well, where was my value? Do they even care?
I was an angry little person at one point.
I don't think you're angry.
You think you felt more of a lack of purpose because you didn't really have a lot of life experience before you actually went in?
Probably.
Yeah.
I didn't have any life experience when I went in.
That's what I mean.
Like none. Do you know what I mean? I went from college. What did I do in college? Get pissed. Do a lot. Went to Duke's a lot, and then joined the military. It's a completely different thing. So, yeah, it's if I've learned to deal with it now, but for me, like the biggest turning point for me, and when I really fully sort of delved into dealing with it was when I reconnected with a load of other bootnecks again. That was it. So when I like Dean and Will, all those boys. So I don't know what it was. I saw them on social media meeting up in London doing like training together, and I don't know what made me think about doing it. I was like, I'll go and do it. I don't mind doing a bit of phys, and got chatting to them, and then ended up doing like competitions, not physique competitions, fitness competition with them, and you felt accepted again. And that was really enlightening. And the moment that really was a massive turning point for me was we finished this an NFG competition, and I was really nervous about going into this because the lads in the team had been winning every competition around the country. Fucking hats off to them, animals, right? And then they invited me into their team. Do you want to be in the elite category? I was like, lads, listen, I'm 10 years older than you lot. And they were like, no, you'll be all right, you'll be fine. Great compliment, right? Whatever. I did the competition, and that night we went out and got fucking smashed. And I got chatting to this guy in this bar, and he started asking me about Afghanistan. And I was so drunk, all I remember was welling up in this club. And I'm just like, and I remember standing around, all the other lads were stood there, and I'm thinking, oh, no, this is not a fucking good time now. You've triggered me. And I don't know why you've triggered me, but you've broke me. Excuse me. And one of the lads I was with, Dean, he'd been when his tour in Afghan, he got hit by an IED. And in my head, I'm thinking, I've got no fucking right to be whinging about whatever's going on in my head. He fucking got hit by an IED. What right have I got? And I remember this, and I remember walking out of the bar to a balcony, and I was really welling up, like really struggling to hold it in, and I don't recall at all what the bloke was asking me or what stories I was spinning. But then Will and Dean walked out the balcony towards me, and they just looked at me, and you just think, oh fucking hell, come on, like man up here. I'm like the older one of the group. I can. They just walked up to me, and you're all right, and I just went. And then they just cuddled me, and they were so fucking chilled when they just went. And I was expecting them. My God's honest truth was, I was waiting for them to go, "I'll fucking grow up," and like, "Don't be a beefer. Let's go get a beer." And that's what I was expecting them to do. But because that was all I can recall. But they didn't. Like straight away, Will and Dean cuddled me and just went, "Just let it out." And that made me even worse. Like I fucking proper broke down then. And they were like, "You're not the only one that feels like that, mate." And that was like a massive weight got lifted off my shoulders. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, fucking hell, right? It's not just me then. And they literally squeezed me like I was their child. And it makes me feel a bit emotional talking about it now. They were brilliant. And then after that, I was just like, right, now I need to go and speak to someone. Like, I need to take this seriously now because it's clearly fucking in here in my head. Yeah. You know, I'd go and meet up, and then it was weird. It's like for a period after meeting up with them and doing that competition, every time I used to speak to them on the phone or I'd go and see them, I'd get emotional. It's because I had this reconnection with them again. Yeah. It was really surreal. And then that's when I was like, right, I need to go and fucking deal with this now because clearly there's something really deep in there that keeps coming out now. You know, it's like once I've reconnected with the boys again, and bearing in mind I didn't even serve with them, it's just the fact that when I spoke to them, they could understand.
They've been through it, yeah.
They could understand, yeah.
And then do you feel like, so that obviously opened the doors a little bit if you start talking about it. Do you feel like you talking about it helped them as well?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, definitely, I think so.
Because there's a trust thing there, isn't there?
100%.
And then, you know, like you're saying as well, the shared experiences,
but
and
that's
that you
what
feel
blokes
safe.
are like, though, isn't it? It's like we go into the city now and you speak to guys, and like I've said this conversation recently. I know we've had these meetings, and they get these mental health workers that are in the offices, which is a really good thing. They're doing that, but no one's going to go and speak to that mental health worker unless that mental health worker goes, "I'm having a really shit day. Anybody want to join me for a cup of tea?" Yeah. Mm. It took me to break down, like emotionally, like really fucking like a bubbling child, for them to then talk. And then Dean opened up about his story. And then I remember doing a posting, the one that I sent you on social media, and then I had messages from lads that I served with going, "Thank you for that. I'm now going to go contact Rock to Recovery." And I'm like, "Ooh."
But the thing is, mate,
like, fucking hell, that's done something. Yeah. But what I mean is, if you work in the city and you're mega stressed out and you're having a really shit day, you've had a massive fucking row, you've got bills to pay, and your kids are winding you up, you're not going to go ring up your mental health aid worker that's done a 2-hour fucking course and go, "Can I have a chat?" They're not going to do it. They need someone that shows their vulnerability to show theirs, because that's what blokes are like. Yeah.
Mm. You can't fake that either. I don't think. I mean, you kind of there's an honesty to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think like when you talk to when you talk about it, there's a real genuine honesty to what you're feeling, and you can see it on you.
Yeah.
And I think people respond to that. Mm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's like huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah. It's been a journey, I know that.
Massive, and like I said, it's sort of 10, 15 years in the making for you as well. Like in that, it's not been a quick fix in any way, shape, or form, is it?
No, I still have night sweats. You know, there's still things like, you know, like it's weird things that can bring back memories. And it's like the other day I was literally a few days ago I was in the gym, and one of the lads was playing random like music when he was training his client in the studio, and he played The Last Post, and anybody knows the military song The Last Post. And like I sat there and it was weird. I went into a zone, and literally two of the lads were like, Glynn, like that, and I just went, oh fucking hell, because the song reminded me of took me back.
Music's got a funny way of doing that, though.
It was really weird. It's like if I hear a Chinook helicopter, because we'd used them a lot in Afghanistan, and that distinctive noise, like instantly, it puts you straight back to being picked up by one. You know, things like that. And that's the only way I can explain it. And you say music, like we all do it. You hear a tune that you really like, and you might go, oh, fucking hell, that song reminds me of. Yeah. But the thing is with PTSD, and everyone deals with their PTSD differently. It's not like literally black and white for everyone. But that's the only way to explain. That's what it's a bit like. It's a little bit like you hear a song, and it brings you back straight away. I can watch a movie, and I remember texting my coach, my real coach, right? And I was like, I've just watched this film, and it was in Afghanistan about a Chinook that got shot down. A load of SF guys get fucking killed, and people go and help them. I was like, it literally took me straight back to my first job in Afghan that I spoke about earlier. And I just remember sitting there crying. And my missus like didn't know. She was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do here." Do you know what I mean? Like, give me a cuddle and stuff. But which is lovely. But you can't get your head out of that space. It's because it takes you straight back.
The coach you're working with, is that still from
Rock to Recovery? Kenny, yeah, fucking legend.
And for those that don't know, Rock to Recovery, Glynn made contact a while back, and obviously they provide support and counselling for ex-military personnel, and they've delved into emergency
services. Yeah, so they were set up by Foxy from the TV show, who's obviously ex-Marine and SF.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Jamie Sanderson, who's an ex-bootneck sniper. and they set it up together. And initially it was set up just to help Marines, and then it went from all to then they started to get a bit more money funding. It's all self-funded, which is why we do the fundraising stuff. And then they managed to go to all military, and then it was all blue light services. They had to raise hundreds of thousands a year, to the counselling, but it's all free to the military and their families. And they are coaches. They don't, I've had counsellors that just go, oh, tell us your story today. Then you're like, oh, what it is. And they're like, oh, lovely. How do you feel about that? You just think, oh. They're relatable coaches. Yeah, no, that didn't work for me. No. That doesn't work for me. You're just venting. I'd rather ring up my mate and save myself £100 an hour. Yeah.
Oh, they're a fantastic organisation, I think,
brilliant.
from what your experience and some of the other guys that have been through it, but absolutely off the clock. And obviously we're still doing bits and pieces with them. Yeah. So they've gone into like police and fire service as well now.
All public services now.
And all UK
and families. Yeah, all UK with their families as well.
That's the other thing as well, like to notice, like it is going to affect like family units. It's not just going to be, it's your effect on your kids, and that's absolutely huge. But like looking back, Glynn, I know this is probably a really loaded question. Like if someone is going through or has come out of the military or is going through some sort of PTSD, or they feel they've got PTSD, would you give them, what advice would you give?
I know this is a common answer, talk to someone, but I would say don't just talk to someone, talk to someone, one, that you can fucking trust and that's going to listen, like not just fucking hear you and listen, and number two, maybe speak to someone that can relate. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, I've spun you how many stories over the years, but can you really relate? Because you can't, because you've never been there. No. Like, you know what I mean? So you need to speak to someone that can relate.
You can empathise. You can empathise and maybe...
But for me, it helped when I spoke to someone, because this was like in myself, I didn't feel embarrassed to talk to someone that didn't understand. It was easier for me to talk to someone that can then give me a story back, like, oh, this happened and that happened. He was like, yeah, fucking hell, mate, when I was in Iraq, this happened. Then you humorise it. Yeah, fucking, like then that dark humour comes out, and I think that's quite important because that helps you get through it, because you then, like, I go like out with Rob, my mate now, and we go mountain biking a lot. We're constantly spinning fucking shit dits all the time, because it's that opportunity for you to get it off your chest. Yeah. You need that.
It's relatable.
You need that to get that off your chest. Like literally be like, oh, do you remember when one of the fucking, or like we were spinning a story the other day about, we went to Basra, and we ended up going to Basra Palace, was where the British HQ was, and bootnecks being bootnecks, the fucking immature reprobates that we are, we decided to climb onto the roof of Basra Palace and get naked. Like, I mean, it's a sniper's dream, isn't it? Like, there's a load of white guys standing on top of on the palace. Should we just shoot them from here? I mean, what a stupid fucking thing to do. We stood out like sore thumbs. Do you know what I mean? But we thought it was hilarious. There's like the top of Basra Palace is like this reddish pink dome. Doing doggies up and down this fucking the top of Basra Palace, completely bollock naked, finding it hilarious, because that was our decompression. We'd just driven through Basra, getting pinged at left, right, and centre, and it like, so how do we deal with that? Let's get fucking naked and run around the British military HQ. Like, I mean, who the fuck does that? But look, we look back on it, we're like wetting ourselves laughing, like thinking how funny it was. And that's how you did it. And we still spin these stories now because that's how you deal with it. You just remember it.
You still feel like you want to talk about it?
Embrace the memory.
I enjoy talking about it now.
Yeah.
Because it helps.
And you're able to...
Selfishly, it helps.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You know, and I can...
absolutely fascinating.
But I think I've got to the point in my life now where I like to think that I can use my story to help someone else, even if they're in a different world. And like military to, I'm a city guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I had a client recently that had a massive meltdown in the city, and like as soon as we started having our training session, he started telling me, and like, you know, most people would be like, all right, let's just do some swings and let's get your head out of it. I didn't. I put the kit down, went, go and sit down. Let's have a chat. Do you know what I mean? Because I felt like I had the skill set now to help him. Do you know what I mean? And even he was like, oh, you know, but, you know, what you've been through, it's like, what's the relevant? What I've been through is nothing compared to what other military guys have been through. You know what I mean? My stories sound fucking like Peter Pan compared to some lads. you know?
But it's fully taking your journey for you to
Yeah.
get there,
Yeah.
to understand it, instead of feeling like the imposter anymore.
Absolutely. And everyone's trauma's trauma, isn't it? So it doesn't matter, you know, you can have trauma from having a child. You can have trauma from going to war. And, you know, I've had guys literally say to me, I couldn't talk to you, mate. I'm like, why? Because of what you've been through. I'm like, that's irrelevant. What you believe is absolutely the lowest of your low, and the worst that you can ever go through your life is what you believe is the lowest of your low. It's irrelevant what I think. My lower might seem to you even worse, but in your head, you're the fucking rock bottom.
But you telling your story, I think, helps, doesn't it? Because it gets it out there.
I think it's the fact that I'm willing to just talk about it. I'm not shy to sit there and talk about it, and I think that's where some military guys need. What a lot of military guys don't seem to realise, that them actually coming out and talking about it will help other people.
It takes a lot, I think, to be mindful enough and self-aware enough to think to yourself, actually, that's not right. And I think that's the first rung on the ladder in it, and it takes a lot to get to that point.
Yeah. It's accepting it. That was the hardest bit. That was literally the hardest bit. It's like, you know, putting my hands up and going, I now. And I think for me, I don't know, I know, you know, my thoughts on social media, but I remember thinking to myself, if I put this out on social media, I've kind of put it in fucking stone now, haven't I? And I put a post, I think it was me in my uniform, and it was something like, my name's Glynn and I have PTSD. Do you know what I mean? And I remember doing that, thinking, once I've put that out there, and I'm not a fan of social media, for those that know that I'm not, but I thought if I put that out there, you know, it's out in the universe now, isn't it?
I think it's really like the nice way to round it up as well. Like you being able to talk about it and help other people. Like, that's a good place to be in for you, isn't it?
It is. It's nice because it's like, and I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning this, but when me and Will had a little chat a few years ago, didn't we? Do you remember? Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to you, like, just fucking, you having a shit day, ring me. It doesn't matter whether you believe that my days have been worse than your days, or it doesn't matter. Like, you know, if you're having a shit day, you talk to someone about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I believe that's where your life experience comes in, because I'm older, I've been through a lot in my life. You know, I've made a lot of fucking stupid mistakes in my life, which I wish I could change. But the one thing it has given me is the ability to be able to listen to someone and maybe give them advice. It doesn't mean it's the right advice, but at least I can give them a different perspective on something. Yeah. And maybe make them go away and think and be like, okay, maybe I could look at that slightly differently.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Once you put it out there, you almost feel like you can get a different perspective now as well. So it's just literally just getting it off your chest, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what EBC is all about.
100%.
I think we're in a world at the minute where anxiety and stress, they seem to be on the increase for an array of different reasons. So,
unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get any easier.
No. So, you know, airing some of these things is really important, and coming up with strategies to cope with it.
Well, you take bloke suicide 300% higher.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. It's not acceptable. Do you know what I mean? Because there's still this bloke stigma. It makes you weak. And don't get me wrong, I think men should be men. Like that, you know, like, I do think we have a certain role in this fucking world. We are naturally born fighters. We should be able to protect our family and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what men should be. But we are also human. And like, you know, and things will affect you in life that are going to like be a detriment to you. And I do think holding it in is not good. You gave I'm not going to point. You gave me an analogy, and I still use to this day, which I think is really good. Like, emotions are like a bottle of Coke. Right? If you shake it up, it's building up pressure, isn't it? Now, at some point, you keep shaking it, that fucking bottle's going to burst. Yeah. If you get that cap and you just slowly release that pressure, it don't overflow, does it? No. You know, and that's a really good analogy. That actually comes from
Sweden. They came from Sweden.
It's twice now, mate.
But it just makes sense, doesn't it? Like, and as a bloke, we don't want to talk about it, but you got to talk about it, because it actually, in the long run, take it from my personal, it's going to fuck your head up.
Yeah. There's one for you, mate, as well. I listened to some of the stories that you don't like telling, and I only heard of like a couple that I found it really interesting. One, like some of the things you come out with and that. But do you feel like having a business kind of linked loosely to sort of like the military and training, do you think that helps you or not?
It gave me purpose, but the big thing that that EBC really gave me was, not gave me as such, but like for the first time that I really noticed that we were making a difference, and it helped me internally, and I didn't realise it at the time, was when we used to first have our first Christmas parties many years ago, 10 years ago, and people would come up to me and go, "Thank you." I'm like, "What for?" I'm like, "Oh, because of you, I'm not on antidepressants, or I feel better in myself." Or it wasn't I look in the mirror and I think I look like a chiseled god. It was I feel better in myself, and that was like that was powerful.
Yeah,
that was powerful. That to me was like fucking hell. Like that made me feel better, you know. So me helping others was helping me.
That's huge,
and that was really beneficial.
That's huge, absolutely huge.
I mean?
And all in at the end of the day, we've said this on another podcast as well. Like that's for us is what it was all about. Is trying to help people through either a tight space, or if they're having a tough time, you know, and getting out and training was all part of it. But
if it wasn't for EBC, I don't know. I don't. It's hard to say even if I'd be here, because I had some fucking shitty dark days. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard to talk about, but. When I knew I had a session to do, and I knew it wasn't like a one-to-one, I knew I had 20 or 30 people there relied on me, and I knew they were going to turn up from a long day in the office and they were going to be in a shitty mood, and they needed me to bring them out of that shitty place. I had to fucking pull my finger out my arse, and that was hard. There were days, and I'm sure there's people that maybe watch this that knew me from 10 years ago and probably would be like, I can remember him saying like a dickhead. Right? But I'm human, I'm not a fucking performing monkey. I would turn up to sessions and be like, I really don't want to be here.
That's so difficult. Right, so difficult.
But I could see their faces. They get out of the car. I'm like, right, guys, let's go.
So difficult to switch that on.
The irony of it is I'd feel probably slightly better when I left.
Yeah.
Because I've helped them.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'd crack on. It's like, right, another day. Tomorrow I've got another session to focus on. And I was just taking one day at a time and looking at the sessions. Some days I wouldn't even get out of the van, would I? You said.
That's such a good way of looking at it. That's such a good way of rationalising it for yourself, because people that are sitting there thinking to themselves, "Oh, Glynn, these sessions were really hard."
Taking it out on them.
You don't realise. You don't realise sometimes.
I wasn't going to turn up and go,
No.
Listen, I'm having a bit of a shit, right? Right? So when I really thrash the fuck out of you, bear with me. I'll be alright in a minute. No, I'd fucking play a game.
Performing monkeys,
you know. And then sometimes I'd go back to the little pokey flat I lived in at the time. And it like massive come down, sleep tablets, trying to go to sleep, which didn't do fuck all. You know, it was like drinking night nurse. It was going out of fashion. It was a joke. You know, but no one ever saw that. But it gave me purpose. And then we started employing people, and that really helped, because then you'll see people start to make a living or a business out of something that you creating, and something that you just borderline just about fucking managed to drag through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting insight for some people as well, like from back at the start as well, when we were doing line share of the sessions. That insight will be really interesting for people to listen to, because people never look at it from that. They've turned up for a training session, and they'll never look at it from that, and they don't need to.
It's not, and they don't need to. And I still say that now. It's not their business thing.
But it's really interesting, and it's like a really honest kind of like view, I think, of what was going on.
But it helped me from a selfish perspective.
And massively.
It still does today.
Massively.
100%.
During session, I've had a tough day. Forget it for an hour and just go.
Because it's enjoyable.
Fun.
Because it's enjoyable.
Pick it back up.
Yeah, it is.
So
it is hard, because when your members are in a shitty mood and they give you shit back, and sometimes you think.
So the next time you get an absolute shoeing at a session even, just bear in mind that the instructor might have had a bit of a bad day.
Yeah.
You know.
I usually get that. No, we'll get
Dear.
1,000 burpees, 30 seconds.
I've had a really good day.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's mad, isn't it? But I talk about it a lot now. I spin fucking stories about it now, and I openly talk about it, because it's how I deal with it now. It makes my life slightly more comfortable, I think, to be able to openly talk about it. And but the funny thing is, people, I think, when they're listening to this, they're thinking that they're going to hear loads of war stories and stuff, but for me, it wasn't always about that. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of things that, it's like we go back to the beginning. It was the anxiety of everything. I always think was the worst part, and I'll spin a story that I've said before to give you a bit of contrast of what I mean by fucking anxiety. So we were driving through Iraq one day, and we were I'm basically stood behind a machine gun out the top of a vehicle, so basically my hips upwards out the top of it. We're doing a convoy coming up to a village called Al-Kurna, I believe it was, and it was notorious for every time you drive through it, getting into a contact.
I could just see Johnny Bravo behind a machine gun. Basically, yeah.
I wasn't even going to bring Johnny Bravo references.
When
he said triangle, I was like, I want to say it.
So we're driving through, coming up to this village, and straight away over the radio, someone would say, just to let you know, we're driving into the village, and it was notorious for getting into a contact or an IED. So we drive down this road once, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and then I was top cover with this other guy, and as we got close to this village, the lad that was with me, he was only a young lad, and the day before, he was in a vehicle, got hit by an IED, and he just sat down. And I was like, what the fuck are you? And I looked down, he was sat down there, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, can't do it. His arse went. And like typical marine mental health, get your fucking ass up here now. And I was a lot more older and experienced than him. Get your ass up here now and stand next to me. Can't. Fuck me, it's me on my own then, isn't it? And I'm the rear vehicle in this long convoy. Right, so everything behind me is a threat. Every vehicle behind me is a threat. And in the military, there's a thing called a combat indicator. So if you're driving through a village every single day and it's busy and busy and busy, and one day you drive through that village and it's empty, combat indicator, something's about to fucking kick off. Because they would tell the villagers, usually. So we're driving down this road, and I'm in the rear vehicle, so I'm looking backwards, right? And there's traffic behind me. And this car comes weaving all through the traffic and literally stops and blocks all the traffic and gets out, straight on his phone. I was like, well, that's not a fucking good sign, is it? Even now, the hairs on my back go up. He stopped all the traffic, and I was like, fuck, something's going to happen, because he's not allowing any local traffic now. No. He's got in his vehicle, he's driven all the way round the side, and he's come down a side road from the distance, and I watched him, and he stopped, got out on his phone, and I'm thinking he's making a fucking phone call. Why would he stop all the traffic? I'm on the radio, just to let you know, the vehicles come through, stop the traffic, and then the traffic coming the other way is all stopped.
Yeah.
Right, it's ambush. I'm just like, fuck, mate, I shit myself. I'm stood out the top of a vehicle. There's nothing you can do. You are literally waiting for it to go off. That level of anxiety is on another level. And what I did was, I remember thinking to myself, we're either going to get fucking in a contact or more than likely going to get hit by an IED. That's more likely what's going to happen. So I remember all that's going through my head is, well, there's nothing over that side of the road as we're driving down, but there's this side of the road. That's probably where they're going to put it. And I had a body armour on at the time, and the old body armour had a plate about the side of a fucking cigarette packet. It's pointless, right? But anyway, so I remember standing there, I shouldn't fucking laugh about it, right? But the vehicle, and all I remember doing is tucking my arms in, turning my back to the side, and I'm stood there watching the traffic, still keeping my eyes on the traffic behind, but tucked my arms in like that, and I remember thinking, well, if it goes off, at least I might save my arms. And that's all I'm thinking. I'm just stood there going, right, well, I'm going to just wait it then, aren't I? So I've got my rifle in my hands, I'm stood there like that, watching the traffic backwards, I just went, right, just wait for it to go. Wait for it to go. And I remember it, and it was literally making me feel really fucking weird thinking about it now. And we drove through this village and nothing fucking happened. And because of that, because of what had happened, they had to send a search party out to go check that road. So when we got to our destination, they sent a couple of vehicles out to go check the road. They found 4 120 shells, which are about this fucking big, dug into the ground, all linked up by a daisy chain. So it's basically linked 1, 2, 3, 4. But the fuse had come out on the first one. So so basically what he was waiting to do was set the off. It would have gone bang, 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 bang as we drove down the road. It would have fucking obliterated us. But the fuse had come out, so it never went off. And you're just like, fucking hell.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Go to bed, wake up the next day, what you got to do? Drive back down the same fucking road. And that's in the back of your head. But it was like that every day. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like every day. And the same
you can't condition for stuff like that. Like.
No, I'll tell you another funny story. We were driving this was in Afghanistan. We were driving through this fucking desert. Fucking hell. Oh, and we had an interpreter with us, right? Up the fucking interpreters. And we had Wimix, was just basically a Land Rover with no windows, doors, and just loads of guns on it. And it was just, we were driving through this fucking open desert, all these fucking like holes and fucking sand dunes, and we were fucking weaving in and out. And there's this road in the distance, we were heading towards this road, and this local bloke's going like this. like that. We're like that, hearts and minds, like waving. And as we get to the road, we were like, go and find out what he wanted. So the interpreter gets out and starts talking to the local. This interpreter just went, Wyatt, turn around, looked at the fucking you could see our tracks, and he just went, we've just driven through a minefield. And me and my mates just went, fucking laughed and went, oh, and you could see our tracks had driven, and where they were slight indents in the fucking sand, where the sand had dropped, where they'd put anti-tank mines, where the sand, and you could see where we'd driven through it. We were like,
oh my word.
Fucking hell, like we've just avoided all of that. It's like ridiculous. And and the thing is, like, that's the kind of anxiety that a lot of military guys would have to deal with every day.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what unit you're in. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of anxiety, and it was that's hard to get out of your head. That's hard to decompress from.
Yeah.
You know? But I laugh about it now.
Yeah, I think your journey so far has been absolutely phenomenal, and to be in a position now where you feel comfortable enough to talk about it and share that with other people, is credit to you and where you've been, and mate, I think it's phenomenal.
Thanks,
I think it's phenomenal, mate.
Yeah. No, it's been a night, man. It's a journey, isn't it? Everyone's got one.
Yeah.
Everyone's got one.
I think as well, like, if you can get to a point, similar to what Wes is saying, if you can get to a point where any form of like help or counselling, I think you're just understanding yourself a little bit better. You're understanding your life and where you've got to up until this point. And if you can understand and you're all right with, you know, what's gone on, some of it's not very nice, but if you're all right with it, what happened, and that you get to that space, I think
well, see, my dad said this to me once, bless his heart, and he said, do you think you'll ever, what did he say? Do you ever think you'll get over it, or and I was like, it's not a fucking disease, Dad. It don't just go away. Like, I still to this day have really struggling days. Like, and I don't mind admitting it, like everyone does. But there are days when I'm just really struggling. Like, I do question my purpose. I do question if I'm good enough. You know, because I think, especially when you've been on a high pedestal. Sorry, that sounds really arrogant. Not a pedestal, but when you like get to quite a high level of the military, and for those that are listening, I haven't made it to the fucking pinnacle of everything, but I was quite high up, I think, in the Marines. I think most would admit. I still question to this day, like, have I still done anything? Am I good enough? Do you know what I mean? I still struggle. I still struggle with my self-worth quite a lot. When I exercise, you know, I think that's probably why I train so fucking hard, because it's like I'm still trying to prove something to myself.
Yeah.
It's probably not necessarily a good thing, but I don't know what else to do with it. Do you know what I mean? Exercise for me is an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
Like not just like to be fit, as we were saying in a previous conversation, but it's I have to do it
mentally.
I have to. It's my self-worth. I have to know that I'm still good enough to push myself. Yeah.
Also, I think it's really important as well. Like, you've developed a bit of an interest with, you know, the cycling side of things and some of the downhill stuff. That's really important, isn't it? To have something that's like complete. You know, you're not trying to achieve anything there in terms of fitness. That's really important.
Mountain biking is just an opportunity to do. You don't think about anything
else
other than
that's important.
A fucking tree at 30 mile an hour.
You just like put yourself somewhere you can get hurt, didn't you?
Yeah.
You are definitely a thrill seeker, aren't you?
Yeah, but do you know what it is? It's one of the reasons I love doing it is, one, because you don't think about it. I love learning something new. Like I said to you earlier, you're never old enough to learn something new.
Yes, massive.
Like, I know, like Will might be 20 years younger than me, but I'll happily learn something more from Will. If he's got something to teach me, I'll learn it. I'm not arrogant enough to think that.
Yeah.
Mountain biking was a new skill which I enjoyed learning, and you can't think about anything else other than a mountain like that at 30, 40 miles an hour and try not to fall off.
But yeah, you're forced to be present, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You're in that moment.
And then I'm doing it with someone who, you know, I've been ambushed with Rob. Do you know what I mean? So we can still spin these fucking silly stories literally up a mountain.
Ambushed in jokes, isn't it? We won't go there.
Your mum wasn't out at the time.
No, probably not.
Wow.
On that bombshell.
On that bombshell.
Probably finish it there, shall we?
Can of worms.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you, Glynn, for sharing your story. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And please, if you are out there and you need someone to talk to, we're always here to talk to you. But please, please, please reach out to someone, talk to them, and
message me.
Message Glynn.
Message me. I haven't got a problem with that.
Absolutely, and vice versa. I'll always be open to having a chat with people. But Guys, thank you very much for listening. And we'll
Cheers,
call it
boys.
there.
Awesome.
Well done, mate.